recognize it at the time. So what happened is I started to get really weird symptoms. And I didn't know that it was a mold and the chemicals and everything at first. I was just exhibiting with these really weird symptoms. So I had muscle pain, joint pain, muscle twitching, insomnia, anxiety, and then my sense of smell started to change. And it wasn't like all of a sudden, it was gradually changing. And then it got so bad that I couldn't tolerate things like perfume or cologne or people's laundry products or exhaust coming from the dryer. All of a sudden, I was so sensitive that I would almost go unconscious from being around people that were wearing stuff or the dryer exhaust or whatever. So it became incredibly difficult to navigate my world. You can imagine I'm like going into convulsions or almost going unconscious because I'm walking by somebody with perfume. So I became so sensitive that I couldn't be with people. I had to quit my job. I started working on the telephone with people, but eventually that had to stop too. I couldn't go to church. I couldn't be with my friends. I could not participate in life because I had to avoid everything. That was the only way that I could survive, is if I avoided everything.
Imagine this. You wake up one day, and out of the blue, you're hit with this suffocating breathlessness, excruciating headache, relentless body pain. Panic sets in as your body starts to wage war against itself from the inside out. Picture yourself now spiraling down a rabbit hole of medical mystery tours, bouncing from one specialist to another. No one can diagnose you. As the confusion mounts, so does fear. Could you be losing your mind? Amidst the turmoil, work becomes this distant dream. Trapped in a cycle of distress and dysfunction, what would your next step be? Enter the extraordinary journey of our guest for the next few episodes on the Dov Baron Show. Our guest is Annie Hopper, and she has not only survived this ordeal, but has emerged victorious, healing herself and revolutionizing the lives of thousands globally. Annie's story isn't just about overcoming, it's about transforming adversity into strength. Whether you have faced such challenges yourself or you know someone who has, and there's a pretty good chance you do, you'll want to stay tuned for this compelling and inspiring journey. As a leader and a learner committed to being anti-fragile, you will love the next two episodes of the Dov Baron Show, so stay curious. Welcome to the Dov Baron Show. Come for the stories, stay for the learning. Join the movement of deeply curious learners by hitting that subscribe button right now. The Dov Baron Show is not just another podcast, it's your passport to unparalleled insights. Each episode features the wisdom of global leaders, scientists, entertainers, philosophers, theologians, and journalists, from astronauts who have traveled the vastness of space to presidential candidates trying to make sense of the world on the brink. We dive into the most intriguing minds. For the next two episodes, our special guest stories and insights will captivate and inspire you. Hit the subscribe button and become part of our global community today. Our guest for the next two episodes is Annie Hopper. She is the founder of the neuroplasticity-based program, the Dynamic Neural Retraining System, DNRS. And he teaches people how to regulate their nervous system by rewiring the limbic system of their brain. Simply stated, she has created a step-by-step process to move people out of the fight, flight, freeze response, I'm sure you've heard of that, into a state of rest and repair where healing can actually occur. Her book is called Wired for Healing, and in that book she shares stories that are nothing short of miraculous, stories of people who have recovered from these debilitating illnesses. Annie Hopper has been invited as a speaker for the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, Institute of Functional Medicine, Canadian Brain Injury Association, Finnish Institute of Occupational Health, Canadian Counselling, and the Parliament House in Helsinki, Finland. That's just to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, turn up the volume and help me to welcome author of Wired for Healing, Remapping the Brain to Recover from Chronic Mysterious Illness, my dear friend, Annie Hopper. Woohoo! Welcome, Annie.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. That was amazing. I am so honored to be here with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you in. This is Annie's book. It is an amazing book. The stories in it are absolutely incredible, and we'll get to more of that in a minute. But I always like to start the show with context, Annie, because we tend to see people as they are in this moment, and who we are in this moment is an evolution. We've become somebody. Tell us how your story began. I know there's the whole story of this incredible recovery and what you've done, but your story. Where did you start off in life? Because I think that's an important thing for us to examine.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you a little bit about my story in terms of how it began. Well, I'm one of 4 children. I'm the youngest sibling in my family. And I grew up in a family with an alcoholic father. And yeah, that was pretty rough on a lot of different levels. However, it didn't stop me from pursuing my dreams or moving forward in my life, did a lot of healing work around that, and pursued my dreams. I was a female stock trader in Toronto. I mean, one of the youngest female stock traders at that time. I was 21 years old. And then I stopped that career, and because I could see that I was going to burn out and it really didn't fulfill my soul. So I moved to become a massage therapist. I became a registered massage therapist. That was just the start of it.
That in itself is very interesting to me. What compelled you into the stock market? Because that's so far away, even from massage therapists, certainly to where you are today. But what compelled you into that? Was that the pull of the money? Because that would make sense at 21.
Well, I started in the industry young. I was only 17. I graduated from high school. I was like, what am I going to do? And I landed a job at a stock brokerage firm. And I had no idea what a stock was, to be quite honest with you. I was like, what's a stock? What is this? And who determines the price of a stock? And I just got curious. So I started at the very bottom and then worked my way up and took my Canadian securities course to get my license to become a broker and a trader. And I was just driven and I loved what I did. There was something about the adrenaline of it and making very quick decisions with complete accuracy that was familiar. And I knew how to do that. And I knew how to do that in a really great way. So that was kind of the start of it. I just happened in that. On one level, it was exciting, but on another level, I was bored to tears. It really didn't speak to my soul at all. Right. I remember attending the morning meetings and thinking, I don't care about the price of gold. I don't care how the Tokyo market did overnight. It just really did not interest me. So when I took a look at what I really wanted to do as my life's work, it was really more around healing and helping people.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because it is such a jump. Stock market to then massage therapist. I know it doesn't end there, but stock market to massage therapist. Did you stumble into it? Because you stumbled into the stock market. Did you stumble into massage therapy?
No, I was actually interested in body therapies. I was interested in massage therapy. I thought that's something that I could do, that I was interested in, that I would be helping people in a really great way. And I loved getting massage myself. So it was just something that I believed in, that I thought would be great.
It's interesting because that's actually when we met, which is 142 years ago.
Yes.
We met all the way back there. Annie and I, so just for transparency, Annie and I are very good friends. Annie was actually at my wedding. She's one of the 3 people still alive. She was at our wedding, and she was a client originally of mine in my private practice. And Annie actually was very good at filling my practice, because anybody who came to see her for massage therapy, she'd say, oh, you need to go see Dov, and then they would come and see me. So I am very grateful for Annie's boost to my business. But you were in massage, and then you were not in that either. Though again, there was another transition.
Yeah, there was another transition. I just had this calling that I should be doing more. Massage therapy was fun and I loved it, and it was instant gratification. People were always happy to see me, but I just knew that there was something more to healing than massage. There was more that I had to offer. So then I went down to the route of emotional root cause analysis, psychology, and becoming a core belief counselor. It was actually interesting. The real transition from massage therapy into life coaching and core belief counseling happened because of a car accident. I moved to Kelowna to explore a relationship that I was in at the time, and I was in a very minor car accident that left me with a severe neck injury where it kind of mimicked Parkinson's, and that was the end of my massage therapy career. Wow. And I already knew that I was transitioning into this other career, but that was the moment that was like, okay, you can't do that anymore. I think I had about 12 weeks of disability or something. And I thought, okay, I have 12 weeks to recreate myself. This is what I need to do. And that's what I focused on. And that's what I did.
So to be clear for everybody else, it's easy to think, okay, you were in the stock market and then you became somebody who did massage. No, you had a massage business. You were entrepreneurial. You had other people working for you. This was a full-blown practice. This was a business as such. And then suddenly you have this accident and you've got to reinvent yourself. So then you become the core belief counselor. you start getting into helping people understand themselves, get to root cause analysis. That's going well. And then another slap upside the head.
So that business was actually going really well. And I had my own newspaper column in the Kelowna Capital News called Emotional Rescue, where I'd be exploring patterns with people, thought patterns, emotional patterns, and behavioral patterns that might block them from love, joy, success in their life, right? So I was doing that. I was also had my one-on-one practice. I was also teaching workshops for people. And I was a guest on local talk radio and known as an emotional wellness expert. So I was doing all of that and it was swimming, loved it, loved my new community, loved my relationship. Everything was going along really well. And then that came to a halt.
I think this is a really important piece here because I said in the introduction that you wake up one day and your life is different. Now, everybody who is a listener knows about my story of falling off a mountain. There's this dramatic stop in the way that I'm doing things. You've heard me say many times that we all have falls. And sometimes those falls are, in my case, literal, but sometimes it's a diagnosis or something terrible, a loss of somebody or a bankruptcy. And you had a fall. You had something that is like, boom, you can't do this anymore. I always want to emphasize to people, it's not that you're doing anything wrong per se. It's just that the path is somehow off. And I know for me, I wouldn't pay attention unless it was dramatic. And so I needed something dramatic, and you certainly got something dramatic. So walk us into that.
Well, so as a core belief counselor, I'd rented an office space in this building, which I thought was perfect. I went in and decorated my office and painted it all my favorite colors and got all new furniture, and it was great. And then slowly I started to get sick, and little did I know that that office building had mold in it. Also, I didn't know that my actual office, well, I did know, my office was located right next door to the janitor supply room where they held all the industrial cleaning chemicals for the building. So I was getting hit with this and not recognizing it.
So can we just pause there for a sec? You just said chemicals in the room next to you, mold. People are every day going out into their world, into their offices, whatever it is. They might be next to the janitor closet and not notice that. They might be surrounded by mold and it smells a bit weird in here, but that's about it, right? This is things that are happening every day for people, yet it had a profound effect on you.
Yeah, well, it was a slow onset, actually. I didn't recognize it at the time. So what happened is I started to get really weird symptoms. And I didn't know that it was a mold and the chemicals and everything at first. I was just exhibiting with these really weird symptoms. So I had like muscle pain, joint pain, muscle twitching, insomnia, anxiety, and then my sense of smell started to change. And it wasn't like all of a sudden, it was gradually changing. And then it got so bad that I couldn't tolerate like things like perfume or cologne or people's laundry products or exhaust coming from the dryer. All of a sudden that I was so sensitive that I would almost go unconscious from being around people that were wearing stuff or the dryer exhaust or whatever. So it became incredibly difficult to navigate my world. You can imagine I'm like going into convulsions or almost going unconscious because I'm walking by somebody with perfume. So that's when the big fall happened. So I became so sensitive that I couldn't be with people. I had to quit my job. I started working on the telephone with people, but eventually that had to stop too. I couldn't go to church. I couldn't be with my friends. I could not participate in life because I had to avoid everything. That was the only way that I could survive, is if I avoided everything.
So the only way to survive was, in your mind at that time, was to somehow put yourself in a bubble.
Yes.
Right? So you couldn't be around other people, but you're in a primary relationship at this time.
Mm-hmm.
You're part of a community, as you said, going to church, meeting with people. Can't do that. You went to the phone. You started working with people on the phone. You couldn't do that because you developed sensitivity to electronic. So now you can't be around people who've got deodorant on, or perfume or any of those kinds of things. You can't pass a vent from a dryer because that'll wobble you out. All these things are attacking you. Is that a fair comment?
It felt like I was being attacked by them. Yeah, for sure. But also my sense of smell had changed. So perfume smelled like toxic bug spray. It was terrible to the point where it was like I felt assaulted by it for sure. And then, as you had alluded to, I became EMF sensitive. So in the same way that chemicals and scents were affecting me, all of a sudden EMFs started to affect me like that too. And EMFs are electromagnetic fields that are emitted from cell phones, wireless, whatever. And that's when it got really bad and really science fiction, because it was at that point that I could no longer live in my home. And I was desperate. I was like, the only thing that I could think of is, how do I survive? And the only thing that made sense at that time is go camping, right? Like, get away from everything. And you know me, I am not a camping girl, right? Like, I don't know how to camp. So I borrowed somebody's camping gear and went and camped for a while. And then I ended up on a broken down houseboat on Vancouver Island. But even before that, I have to tell you, I knew the brain was somehow involved because it just didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, how come somebody else can go down the laundry detergent aisle and be fine with all of the laundry detergent stuff? But if I walk down that same aisle, I'll go into central nervous system convulsions or something. And I'm like, there's something terribly wrong with that. And my brain is filtering sensory information in a really weird way. So I knew that my brain was involved from a very early stage.
Okay, let's just pause there for a sec. You knew that how? Was that just sort of an assumption? Was that an intuition? Was that from your belief patterning stuff? I'm sure there are many of your clients, many of the people who followed your work for the last decade or so, who have read your books, who don't put it together. This is their brain. They just think the world is a very toxic place and we have to clean up the planet, and they externalize all those things, all those solutions. So how did you know it was the brain?
A couple of things come to mind. One is through deductive reasoning, because I'd been to see every specialist that I could and nothing was working. I'm like, well, if that's not the answer, then there has to be something else. And I was taught by a very wise mentor at one point, and had the personal experience of changing my reality, of changing my perspective and changing my reality. So I knew that if I could take a different perspective, that it's possible that my reality could vastly change. So then I was interested in, okay, if it's not this, then it has to be my brain, because it was also distorting my thought patterns and my emotional patterns too. I was no longer recognizable as myself. I'm like, okay, I've got all of these physical symptoms, but also when I become that curious observer and just take a look at my own thought patterns, I'm like totally thinking about my survival all of the time. And emotionally, it was like trauma that had happened many, many years ago that I'd already dealt with was coming up. It was almost like a PTSD kind of thing where trauma from my past was coming up as if it was now in the present. And I was just like, oh my goodness, my brain is stuck in a trauma loop. That's exactly what's happening. It was also reading Norman Doidge's work, The Brain That Changes Itself. That was a big aha moment for me because, yeah, the brain is incredible. And if we can find a way to recalibrate the limbic system, I just thought, well, if I can find a way to recalibrate it, it might actually solve all of it.
Obviously, you now work with people all over the globe, and you have communities all over the globe, and you have an online presence with your own training and all the rest of it. When you were in this state that you were in,
yeah,
did you have any sense that this was such a big, disconnected community nonetheless, but a community of people who had bounced from specialist to specialist and could not get the answers and were isolating themselves, living in a bubble, probably looking a little loony as far as many people were concerned? Did you have any idea that community was so large?
Yes, I kind of thought that it would be. And also I knew that there was overlap in symptoms with a whole bunch of other chronic and mysterious illnesses, right? And that not so mysterious anymore, but chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and chronic pain and anxiety and depression. And I did some research and looking at brain scans, and the overlapping common denominator was this overfiring, overactivation of these protective circuits in the brain. So I knew that this was not just about chemical sensitivities. It was really, really widespread, and people were just exhausted their options. A lot of people had exhausted their options, and specialists don't know about this. So I knew it was going to be millions.
I mentioned in the introduction, if you didn't hear it, go back, but you've been invited to speak all over the world to many medical professionals, brain doctors, etc., and you don't claim to be any of those things. So what was the turning point for you?
The turning point for me in terms of?
In terms of being able to assist others, not just yourself, but assist others, because it's one thing to go, oh, I feel much better. It's another thing to go, oh, I could help others, and then to feel that weight of, well, I'm not a neuroscientist or I'm not a medical doctor.
Well, interesting question. I think that I had the skill set to help people because I had already been doing workshops. I'd already been working one-on-one with people. I knew about emotional root cause analysis psychology. I knew emotions. I knew that I could teach this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to help people. And I made a promise to myself, if and when I healed, that I would share this with the world. So that was part of my promise. So in the beginning, I started teaching the program out of my living room in my own home with like 3 people. I'm like, okay, I got to teach you what to do. This is what you have to do. So I started small, then that grew bigger, then that grew bigger. And then I started teaching programs at different venues. And then I hired people to help me teach the programs. And then we helped programs for 30 people here, and all over the world. But then I thought, it's not enough because they're not going to be able to travel to wherever I am because of their illness or whatever. I need to be able to format this in a way that they'll be able to do it from the comfort of their own home. So that's when we devised the video series. And the first one was filmed in 2011, I think. We released it in 2011. And the updated series was released just a couple of years ago now. And in terms of not being a doctor, it was interesting because for the longest time, I thought that that was my setback, that I needed a PhD in neurology or I needed a PhD in something in order to help people. And that was actually a big block for me. And it turned out that that's not what people need. They need someone who understands them, who've actually walked in their shoes and know how to recover. And that's what people need. And that's what I provide them.
So tell us about your first experience of talking to these medical professionals when you're not from that background. So you've been through the experience.
Yep.
You've developed a system. You've helped others. And now, how do you even get invited to be speaking to medical people? And then what the heck does that feel like for you? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people going like, oh, okay, whatever.
Well, I applied to speak and submitted my submission for speaking, and they said yes. My first one was at the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Let me preface that by saying they do a lot of good work. But some of the people at that conference felt so threatened by what I was presenting, and I think that they thought I was going to say it's all in your head, but that's not what I was saying at all. But they felt so threatened by what I was going to be speaking about that they sent around a petition during the event to try to get me to not speak. What? And so that was my very first medical conference. And it was a big challenging one, but it didn't stop me from speaking. You can imagine how scared I was. I found out that they were sending around a petition.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you find out before you got on stage?
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So tell us about that. I'm imagining my listener going, wouldn't you just leave? Like, what would you do? Because it's intimidating to be a non-medical person speaking to a medical community, and then to find out, oh, there's a rebellion going on.
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times, actually. So, yeah, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. But, you know, I have trust and faith in something bigger than me. And I also know that this message is way bigger than me. There are people out there are millions of people that need to hear this. And that is way more important than whatever fear I might be feeling. So a wise mentor said, take your fear by the hand and invite it anyway. And that's what I did. I said, okay, fear, I hear you. And I know that you're here, but you know what? We have a really important message. And it's important for us to go out on that stage today. And after speaking, there were some people that were very excited about the message that I was saying. And then 5 years later, this is interesting, I spoke at another conference. Some of those same people were there. It was a different conference, but some of the same people. And again, I'm terrified because I'm like, oh, the last time I spoke in front of these people, they were petitioning me to not speak. And I went out and I did my talk and those same people gave me a standing ovation. So I'm like, okay, it took 5 years for that to happen. And I'm so glad that I didn't let my fear get in the way.
Yeah, that is in and of itself so powerful that you didn't let the fear get in the way, which obviously would have been very, very easy to do. I think it's potentially terrifying to get on stage in front of a bunch of people who are experts in their field for whatever the reasons are, and to be speaking to them about something that they may not know. I know when I have that experience myself, as you know, recently I spoke in LA at a neuroscience conference to psychiatrists and neuroscientists, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have that, but I could feel my own heart going, but they weren't petitioning against me. The fact that you had the courage to do that with them petitioning is extraordinary. And then to see 5 years later that those same people would give you the standing ovation, that's very gratifying, but there's more to it. And I want to go into really what's there. I want to go into the system you've built, the foundations of that, the 5 pillars of that, and of course the impact that it's had on people. We're going to do that in part 2 of the show. Before we do that, though, I want to make sure that people know, even if they've just listened to this first part, how they can find out more about you, about the resources, about the workshops, about the book. Please tell people where they can find out more about you, about the book, about the course, etc.
Well, if they go to our website, retrainingthebrain.com, they'll find everything there, from the online video series, which is like a 13-hour instructional video series that really shows people how to rewire the limbic system and everything that they need to know. We have a whole bunch of resources there. They can also buy the book there. And we have ongoing resources there. So we have a global community forum of over 16,000 people who have either taken the program or are in the process of taking the program, and all of their victories and tips, and also the other support services that we offer. So Living DNRS, which is a 12-week group support call for people that are implementing the program, and our one-on-one coaches who have been trained extensively in the method and provide one-on-one support for people, and also our Share a Laugh classes, which is a group class to help elevate your emotional state. So all kinds of resources there, and they'll find it all on the website.
We're going to make sure that all those links and any social media links are posted in the show notes. So if you didn't catch it, it's okay. Just scroll down to the show notes and I promise you it'll be in there, because we always put it in there. And we're going to continue on with this amazing conversation with my friend Annie Harper, author of Wired for Healing. This is an extraordinary story. I promise you, it's expanded over many, many years, and the impact has been profound. I'm going to encourage you to stay with us and stay curious. We're going to be back in just one click for part 2 of the show. Till then, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about that friend of yours. Maybe it's you. But about that friend of yours who's got that weird thing going on that nobody is able to diagnose. What is that? Well, we're going to go more into that and how to recognize it and deal with it in part 2 of the show. So stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.